The night was thick with mist as the Northmen surrounded the camp of the Lannister army. Whispering Wood lived up to its name. Every sound, the rustle of leaves, the movement of horses, the quiet steps of men, felt like a secret being passed between trees. But the loudest secret that night was war. Robb Stark waited behind the lines, his sword drawn, his direwolf Grey Wind pacing beside him like a shadow of death. His blue eyes didn't blink. He wasn't a boy anymore. Not after what happened to his father. Not after the South declared war on the honor of the North. The original Battle of Whispering Wood, in the true tale, ended with Robb capturing Jaime Lannister, one of the most dangerous fighters in all of Westeros. But in this version, things go differently. Robb doesn't just win. He destroys Jaime's army. The plan was better, smarter. Thanks to Rose Bolton's cold but sharp advice and Great Janumba's fury, Robb had split his army into 3 flanks. Instead of trapping Jaime, they drew him out, tempting him to think he was about to crush a smaller, weaker force. Jaime, proud and arrogant, took the bait, but this time Robb didn't want prisoners.
Not really.
He wanted to send a message. So when Jaime's cavalry charged through the forest path, they didn't find cowards fleeing. They found spiked traps, archers hidden in the trees, and pikes waiting in the mud. By the time Jaime realized it was a trap, he was bleeding from his shoulder, his horse was dead beneath him, and his golden armor was covered in filth and blood. He fought like a madman, swinging his sword with wild skill. But even lions bleed when cornered. Great Janumba knocked Jaime from his feet with a brutal swing of his axe, and Grey Wind pinned him down, snarling, teeth bared an inch from his face. Robb stepped forward through the chaos. His cloak was torn, his cheek cut, but his stance was steady. Jaime, on his back, spat blood and tried to laugh. "Well done, boy," Jaime hissed. "What now, kill me?" Robb looked down, silent. This was the moment that changed everything. In the real story, Robb took Jaime as prisoner. He treated him with honor, as the son of Ned Stark might. But not now. Not after hearing what happened in King's Landing. Not after getting a raven 2 nights ago with a sealed message. Ned Stark was dead. Robb knew it in his bones, even before he opened the scroll. His father had been executed like a traitor in front of the whole city. By order of King Joffrey, honor was dead. So Robb Stark bent down, stared into Jaime's eyes, and said one word, "No." He turned his back. Grey Wind finished it in a heartbeat. Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer, the pride of House Lannister, died screaming in the mud of the Whispering Wood, torn apart by a direwolf. His men surrendered quickly after that. Some ran, most died. The North had won the battle and changed the war. Word spread fast. That night, as the fires of the dead lit the sky, bannermen drank and sang, but Robb didn't join them. He sat alone, holding the sword of Jaime Lannister. It felt heavy, not in weight but in consequence. Killing Jaime meant there was no hostage to trade, no leverage over Tywin, no slow negotiations. Robb had made a statement. The North was not here to play games. He wasn't fighting for peace anymore. He was fighting for vengeance. In the camp of House Lannister, the Red Lion bled. Tywin Lannister, cold and calculating, received the raven at Harrenhal. The message was short. Jaime is dead. Whispering Wood is lost. For the first time in years. Tywin didn't speak. He just stared into the fire, his jaw clenched, and realized he had underestimated the boy. And in King's Landing, Queen Cersei broke a mirror in rage, her twin, her lover. Her other half, gone. She whispered a promise to the gods. The North will pay. That boy will die screaming. But Robb Stark didn't care. He was already marching south, and this time he wasn't planning to stop. The night after the battle, rain fell on the Whispering Wood, washing away blood but not memories. Robb Stark stood in the quiet of his tent, looking down at Jaime Lannister's golden sword. The steel caught the candlelight, but it felt cold in his hands. Grey Wind lay by the entrance, silent, watching the shadows move. The wolf had killed Jaime, and yet Robb felt no victory in it. Only weight, heavy weight. Catelyn Stark entered without asking. Her face was pale, her eyes wet from crying. "You killed him," she said softly, not angry, just shocked. Robb didn't turn. "Yes, you should have kept him." He was worth more alive. No, Robb replied, voice flat. Not after father, she stepped forward. I understand your pain, Robb, I do. But this war isn't won by rage. It's won by strategy. We could have traded him for your sisters, for Sansa, maybe Arya. Robb finally turned, eyes blazing. And if we traded, what then? Joffrey would send Sansa's head in a box and spit on the deal. You think I don't want them back? I'd burn the world for my sisters. But Lannisters don't care about honor. They only understand blood. Catelyn didn't argue. She just looked down. Then you must be ready for what comes next. Tywin won't let this go. You killed his son. I know, Robb said, setting the sword on the table. Let him come. I'll kill him too. Across the river, the Lannister camp was a graveyard. Smoke rose, not from campfires but from burning corpses. The survivors looked broken. Men who had once marched proud under red banners now crawled through mud, afraid of every snapping twig. And in Harrenhal, Tywin Lannister sat at a massive stone table, surrounded by maps and warlords. But for once, no one spoke. Even Sir Keevan, his loyal brother, stayed silent. He's dead, Tywin finally said. Jaime is dead. Slain like a dog in the forest by that wolf pup. Sir Kevan cleared his throat. We still hold the south. The riverlands can burn. King's Landing is strong. Tywin's eyes flashed with something rare, something close to fury. My son is dead. Do you think I care about fish and farms now? He stood, his voice rising. I want Robb Stark's head. I want his castle turned to rubble. I want his mother hanged from the walls of Riverrun. If we don't answer this with fire, the realm will see us as weak. One man stepped forward. Sir Gregor Clegane the Mountain. Let me go north, my lord, he growled. I'll bring you the boy's head. Tywin nodded once. Take what you need. Burn the villages. Leave no survivors. Back in the north, ravens flew fast. From White Harbour to Deepwood Motte, the bannermen of the Starks heard what happened. Jaime Lannister is dead. Robb Stark has won at Whispering Wood. Some wept with pride. Others feared what it meant. In Winterfell, Maester Luwin read the message with trembling hands. Bran Stark listened quietly as the Maester finished reading. Robb killed the Kingslayer, Luwin whispered. This changes everything. Bran looked toward the Godswood. Will the war end now? No, Luwin said, sighing deeply. It's only begun. Meanwhile, Robb pushed deeper into the riverlands. Town after town rose to meet him, banners waving the direwolf of House Stark. The small folk called him the Wolf King. Women sang songs about the boy who killed a lion. Soldiers began believing Robb was something more than just a man, maybe a chosen warrior of the old gods. But Robb didn't feel like a king. He felt hunted. He had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. And then came the next blow. A raven arrived at midnight. Robb's hand shook as he read the message. Sansa. Stark had been forced to kneel before Joffrey in the throne room. And worse, she was to be wed. Not to Joffrey now, but to Tyrion Lannister. A slap in the face. Catelyn gasped when she read it. They're mocking us, using her like a pawn. Robb's jaw clenched. She's bait. They want me to move too fast, to make mistakes. Catelyn looked into her son's eyes, searching for the boy she raised. Robb, she said quietly, don't lose yourself. This war may kill us all, but don't let it kill you. But it was already too late. Something inside Robb had changed the moment Jaime screamed in the mud. And far away, Queen Cersei held her own raven. Her fingers shook with fury. She killed him, she said to no one, clutching the Lannister lion pendant at her neck. That Stark witch let him die. She turned to her Maester. Send a message to Dawn. I want snakes, venom, assassins. If I can't have justice, I will have revenge. And so the pieces moved. North and south, war thickened like storm clouds. The Whispering Wood had whispered of death. Now it screamed of fire. The banners of House Stark waved high above the castle walls of Riverrun, but peace did not live inside. Robb Stark stood in the great hall, surrounded by lords from every corner of the north and the Riverlands. The air was thick with anger, pride, and something sharper, fear. They had won a great battle. But they had also started a war without rules. Roose Bolton stood near the shadows, his pale eyes fixed on Robb. "You've sent a message, Your Grace," he said softly. "But men like Tywin Lannister, they don't forget. They don't forgive." Robb looked up from the map spread across the war table. "Good, let him come. Let him bring fire and sword. We'll give him the north to choke on." Lord Karstark nodded fiercely. "Aye! We'll drown his army in the rivers and feed his bones to the wolves." But Catelyn Stark wasn't celebrating. She had read another letter that morning, a raven from the Vale. Lisa Arryn had refused to send aid, locking herself behind the high walls of the Eyrie, hiding her son like a scared bird. "We are alone," Catelyn warned them. "We have no allies left in the south. No fleet in the east, and the north cannot march forever." Robb didn't answer. His eyes were on the road ahead, and that road led to King's Landing. But before they could even plan, the war hit them again, harder this time. It began with fire. At a small village called Hayholt, just west of River Run, smoke rose high into the sky. By the time Robb's scouts arrived, the place was nothing but black ashes. Children were nailed to trees. Women were burned in their homes. A sigil had been carved into the dead bodies, a red lion. The mountain had arrived. Gregor Clegane rode with 200 men through the riverlands, killing everything in his path. Not armies, villages. Not soldiers, civilians. His orders were clear: terror, destruction, chaos. And it worked. Suddenly, Robb's lords were no longer thinking of marching on King's Landing. They were racing to protect their homes, their people. "This is what Tywin does," said Rose Bolton in his calm, cold voice. "He doesn't fight us with swords. He fights us with fear." Robb slammed his fist on the table. "Then we give him something to fear," Catelyn stepped in. "What will you do, Robb? Burn their villages too? Kill their children? Will you become like them?" "No," Robb said, jaw tight. "But I'll remind them the North doesn't kneel. If Tywin wants blood, we'll drown him in it." But behind closed doors, Robb was unraveling. The guilt of Jaime's death, the loss of his sisters, the letters from Sansa begging for help, each weighed heavier than armor. And then came the whispers from within, whispers of betrayal. Lord Walder Frey had not forgotten the insult. Robb had promised to marry one of his daughters. But the war had changed everything. Robb had already started growing close to Talisa Magyar, the healer who tended to wounded men after the battle. She saw Robb not as a king, but as a young man, breaking under pressure. "You can't save everyone," she told him one night as she stitched a wound on his arm. "I have to try," Robb said. "Or what kind of king am I?" She looked into his eyes. "The kind who survives." That night, Robb kissed her for the first time, and far away, Queen Cersei drank her wine and planned her next move. "We can't kill him in battle," she said. "He's protected, respected, worshipped." Then she smiled. "But the North has traitors too. Every pack has a wolf that bites its own." She sent gold to the twins, a raven to Roose Bolton, promises of land, of titles, of marriage. "Bring me the young wolf," she whispered, "and I will make you Lord of Winterfell." Meanwhile, Robb received another raven from Balon Greyjoy. His words were cold as iron. "The sea does not care for wolves or lions. But while you bleed each other dry, I will take the North." And just like that, the North had been invaded. The Ironborn had taken Deepwood Motte. Winterfell was now vulnerable. Robb stared at the message, stunned. "They came while we were fighting in the south," he whispered. Catelyn paled. "Bran, Rickon." But it was too late. The wolves had left their den unguarded, and the vultures had come to feast. The rain never stopped in the riverlands. It soaked banners, blurred maps, and turned roads into rivers of mud. But nothing drowned the news that reached Robb Stark's war tent that cold morning. Winterfell had fallen, not to the Lannisters, not to the south, but to Theon Greyjoy, his own friend, his father's ward. A brother in all but blood. Robb read the raven's message twice. His hands trembled, but his voice stayed cold. "Theon betrayed us," he whispered, eyes locked on the ink. "He took Winterfell. Captured Bran and Rickon." Catelyn's voice cracked. "He was raised with you. Fed in our halls." Robb didn't answer. Rose Bolton stepped forward. "Should we march north?" Robb shook his head. "If we go now, we lose the riverlands. Tywin will strike. The mountain will burn more villages. We'll be surrounded." Catelyn stared at him. "So what will you do? Leave your brothers in the hands of that snake?" A storm was building behind Robb's eyes. He walked outside the tent. Rain hit his face like knives. Talisa followed, pulling her cloak tighter. "You're breaking," she said softly. "No," Robb said. "I already broke the day I killed Jaime." Talisa touched his hand. "You're still human." "No," Robb said again. "I'm a king now. Kings don't get to feel." Inside, Rose Bolton whispered to his bastard son, "Ramses, a name few yet feared, but soon would. Take men. Retake Winterfell," Roose ordered. "Kill every last Ironborn." Ramses smiled like a wolf that had tasted man. "And the Stark boys?" Roose paused. "Do what needs to be done." Meanwhile, in the capital, Queen Cersei's laughter echoed through the Red Keep when she heard Theon had taken Winterfell. "Perfect," she told Lord Baelish. "The North burns itself, and we don't lift a finger." Petyr Baelish smiled politely. "Wars are easier to win when your enemies eat each other." Cersei narrowed her eyes. "And the boy king?" "Joffrey." Baelish smirked. "He's busy torturing bards and shooting crossbows at cats." But Joffrey wasn't idle for long. Cersei placed a letter in his hand, stamped with the direwolf seal of Robb Stark. It was a message, sent publicly by Raven to every corner of Westeros. "The North remembers, and it will repay every drop of blood with fire." Joffrey read it, then tore it. "Let the dog come," he shouted. "I'll put his head on a spike next to his father." Cersei didn't stop him. She just poured more wine. Back at Riverrun, cracks were spreading. Walder Frey sent a cold reply to Robb's last raven. "You broke your promise. I hear you ride with a healer girl, not one of my daughters. House Frey is not your whorehouse. We are watching." Catelyn read it and sighed. "You should have honored your word." Robb stared into the fire. "I gave them a victory. I gave them Jaime's head. Is that not enough?" But deep down, he knew it wasn't. Nothing was ever enough in Westeros. Catelyn grew more restless each day. Her sons were missing, her home taken, her husband gone. She prayed at the sept daily, but the gods were silent. Then she made a mistake, a mother's mistake. One night, in the dead of darkness, Catelyn entered the prisoner tent where Sir Alton Lannister was held, along with Sir Cleos Frey and a few captured knights. She freed them. "If there's any chance of Sansa and Arya being traded," she whispered, "you must go." When Robb found out, he was silent for hours. Then he stood in front of his men, eyes empty. "My mother has betrayed my command. She's to be confined to her chambers. No one is to speak to her without my word." And just like that, House Stark began to crumble from within, but the worst had not come. A raven arrived from the Dreadfort. Rose Bolton had returned. Ramsay was with him, and his report was short. "Winterfell is ashes. The Ironborn are dead. The Stark boys vanished." Catelyn collapsed when she heard. Robb caught her, but she sobbed like a woman who had just lost the last light of hope. "Gone?" she whispered. "Both of them." "Burned," Rose said calmly. "That's what Theon left behind." 2 charred bodies. Robb turned away. His face didn't move, but inside, something shattered. The young wolf died that night, and a colder king took his place. The sky over Riverrun stayed grey for days after the news. The North had lost Winterfell. Bran and Rickon Stark were believed to be dead. The charred bodies, left behind by Theon Greyjoy, had been buried in silence under stone and rain. Robb Stark didn't speak much after that. He stood in the war tent for hours, not moving, staring at a map that had begun to feel like a graveyard. So many markers for battles. So many rivers turned red. So many names crossed out. He had come south to win a crown. Now he was losing everything that made him who he was. Talisa stayed near him, quiet, never asking questions. She would touch his hand sometimes, or bring water and clean cloths. He would nod, barely, but then one evening he looked at her and finally said something. "I should have gone home." She didn't say you couldn't. She didn't say you had to fight. She just said, "You still can." But Robb shook his head. "There's no home left. Not for me." At the same time, Walder Frey's response arrived like a knife wrapped in silk. A scroll, stamped in red wax, delivered by a trembling servant. Robb opened it slowly. The words were polite, but the message was not. You broke your oath. No man who breaks his word is worth a crown. My daughter cries each night, knowing she was promised and forgotten. I've agreed to a meeting at my son's wedding to speak on peace. But trust has its price, Robb frowned. Peace? Bruce Bolton, standing quietly nearby, nodded. Lord Walder offers a truce. His son Edmure is to marry one of the Frey girls. He invites you to the wedding. As a guest of honor, Robb's eyes narrowed. He wants to see my face. He wants me to kneel, perhaps, Rose said, voice like snow. Or perhaps he sees reason. Even Lord Frey fears Tywin more than he hates you. Catelyn, now pale and tired, stood by the door of the tent. Don't trust him. Walder Frey doesn't forget, and he never forgives. Robb didn't reply. He just stared at the letter, then folded it carefully. We go. Your Grace, Catelyn said, stepping forward. This feels wrong. It is wrong, Robb said. But I have no allies left. The Freys hate me. The Greyjoys betrayed me. The Lannisters want my head. What other choice do I have? She looked into her son's eyes and saw someone she didn't recognize. The boy was gone. What stood before her now was a king made of grief, steel and fury, and steel doesn't bend. That night Robb married Talisa in secret. In a godswood behind the camp, under the ancient weirwood trees, they said their vows. There were no lords, no banners, no trumpets. Only two hearts clinging to each other in a world trying to kill them. You make me feel alive, he whispered as they kissed. Talisa smiled. Then stay alive. But even love couldn't stop what was coming. At Harrenhal, Tywin Lannister sat with a goblet of wine, reading Walder Frey's Raven. He didn't smile, but his eyes gleamed. He's agreed, then? Cersei asked. He's agreed to the feast, Tywin said. And to the rest, Cersei leaned forward. It has to be clean, final. It will be, Tywin said calmly. When the wolf walks into the den, the trap will close. The North will fall not by sword, but by trust. And in the twins, Lord Walder Frey prepared for the grand wedding. He had his daughters dressed in silver and blue. He had the hall filled with bread, meat and wine. He had the musicians ready to play songs of joy and loyalty, but hidden beneath all that, he had crossbows, knives, men in armor waiting for a signal. He laughed to himself as he tried on his best cloak. They all think I'm a joke, he muttered. But the joke's on them now. Back at Riverrun, Catelyn sat beside a candle, staring into the flame. She whispered the names of her children like a prayer. Robb, Sansa, Arya, Bran, Rickon. She stopped. 2 names already gone. One lost in King's Landing. Another missing in the Riverlands. One riding toward a trap, and no gods to answer, only silence. The twins loomed ahead like 2 stone giants guarding a cursed gate. Grey skies hung heavy above the towers. The river flowed cold and slow beneath the drawbridge. It didn't feel like a wedding. It felt like a funeral waiting to happen. Robb Stark's army approached with cautious celebration. Banners flapped. Pipes played. Ben laughed nervously. But in Robb's chest something pulled tight. I don't trust this, Catelyn said beside him, for the 3rd time that day. You've said that, Robb replied, eyes forward. Then listen. Freys don't smile unless they're planning something ugly. Robb didn't argue. He didn't need to. He knew. But what choice did he have? The Lannisters had armies. The Karstarks had abandoned him. The North was in ruins. And the Freys, they were offering peace, if not friendship, at least a pause in bloodshed. At the gates, Lord Walder Frey stood with his daughters lined up like sheep. His face was wrinkled with age, but his eyes were sharp and cruel. King Robb, he said, not bowing. You've grown taller. Shame your word didn't grow with you. Robb dismounted and nodded, holding Talisa's hand tightly. Lord Frey, we come in peace. That'll be a first, Walder muttered, then coughed a laugh. Come then, let's get you drunk and married. Inside the twins, the feast began. Edmure Tully, Robb's uncle, stood red-faced and nervous beside his Frey bride, a girl prettier than expected, though silent and pale. Rose Bolton sat near the high table, drinking slowly, eyes watching everything. Always watching. The hall was filled with meat, bread, barrels of ale. Musicians played soft, cheerful tunes. Laughter echoed through stone walls, but beneath the laughter something crawled. Talisa leaned close to Robb. Why are they staring at me? Because you're beautiful, Robb whispered, trying to smile. But she was right. The phrase looked at her like an insult wearing a dress. Lord Walder especially kept glancing her way, sneering. "You brought your whore to my daughter's wedding," he said loudly, making half the hall fall silent. Catelyn shot up from her seat. "She is his queen," Walder raised his cup. "A queen of broken oaths, then," Robb stood calm but firm. "We came to make peace, not to trade insults." "A shame," Walder smirked. "Insults are cheaper than war." The tension broke with forced laughter. Music rose again. Cups were filled. The night grew longer, but Catelyn noticed something. Some Freys were leaving the hall. Others, men in armor, were entering from side doors, dressed as servants, slipping behind columns, walls. Shadows. Her fingers clenched the cup in front of her. She looked to Robb, then to Rose Bolton, who sat beside her, smiling politely. "What is that you're wearing, my lord?" she asked, voice calm. Rose looked down at his sleeves. "A fine doublet." "Frey colors." "No," she said. "Underneath," he paused. "Chainmail. For protection. From who?" He didn't answer. That was when the music changed. The pipes stopped. The drums slowed. A single violin began to play The Rains of Castamere. Robb looked up. The doors slammed shut, and Walder Frey stood. "My lords, my ladies," he said. "I believe the hour grows late," Catelyn screamed. "Robb!" But the arrow was already in the air, only this time it didn't strike Robb. It hit Talisa. She gasped, looking down at the bolt in her belly. Blood spilled from her mouth. Her hand reached for Robb, then went limp. Robb caught her as she fell. More arrows followed. 2 hit Robb in the back, dropping him to one knee. Northern men reached for swords, but the wine had been drugged. Their reaction slow. Too slow. Freys stabbed freely, grinning. Catelyn grabbed a dagger from the table and took Walder's youngest wife hostage. "Enough!" she screamed. "Let him go or I'll kill her." Walder didn't blink. "Go on then." And with no hesitation, Catelyn slit the girl's throat, but it didn't matter. The Freys had already surrounded Robb. Rose Bolton walked forward. "Calm as rain. I told you not to trust me," he said, and then he drove his dagger straight into Robb's heart. But this time, something was different. Arya Stark was near, and one of the Stark boys was not dead at all. The air outside the twins was thick with the scent of blood and wet grass. The rain had stopped, but the ground was soaked with more than just water. Arya Stark crouched behind a wagon, her face muddy, heart thudding like a war drum. She had arrived just before the wedding feast ended. Too late. Too late to stop it. She had seen men in Frey colors laughing, dragging bodies from the hall. One body wore a direwolf cloak, soaked through with red. Her brother, her king Robb, dead, Talisa too. Her hand dangled lifelessly over the cart's edge, blood still dripping from her fingertips. Arya's body locked. Her breath froze in her throat. Her sword hand twitched, but she didn't draw needle, not yet. "Not here. The Freys killed them all," she whispered to herself. "Every one of them." She gritted her teeth, tears hot and silent on her cheeks, but someone was watching. A hand gripped her shoulder roughly. She spun, knife already raised, but the face she saw stopped her cold. The Hound. "You want to die too, girl?" he growled. "Because that's what you'll find if you walk in there." Arya stared up at him, trembling with rage. "They killed Robb, yeah, and they'll kill you if you don't move." He pulled her back toward the horses tied behind the trees. "Come on, we're not finished yet." "But we're not winning this fight tonight." Arya didn't want to go. Every step away from the twins felt like betrayal, like running, like weakness. But she went, and in her heart something broke. Something cold replaced it. She wasn't Arya anymore. She was a wolf now, with no pack, only teeth. Back inside the great hall, the bodies were being cleared. Robb Stark's corpse lay at the feet of Lord Walder Frey, Talisa's body beside his. Catelyn Stark's throat had been slit. She had died screaming. Music had stopped. Only silence filled the stone walls now. Rose Bolton stood over the corpses like a butcher admiring his kill. "This will be remembered," he said. Walder Frey scoffed. "I hope so. I paid a heavy enough price for it." "You'll have the North," Rose replied. "What's left of it? And you?"
Frey asked. Rose smiled thinly.
Winterfell, the title of warden, and the Lannisters' favour. He turned to leave, but what neither of them knew was that one of the Stark boys was still alive. In a ruined barn outside Winterfell, Bran Stark stirred awake. The dreams had been long and strange. Wolves in the snow, a three-eyed crow, his father's voice whispering from the wind. But now real voices filled the air. Mira Reed sat nearby, sharpening a knife. Jojen lay weak, coughing beside her. They had escaped the fall of Winterfell, thanks to Hodor and Mira's courage, and gone north, beyond the walls of broken stone and burned wood. They think you're dead, Mira said softly. Bran blinked. Robb? She looked down. Gone. Bran stared up at the rafters of the old barn. The wood above him was cracked, the stars visible through gaps. Gone. Robb, mother, the north. Tears didn't come. Only silence. I need to keep going, he said quietly. North. Mira asked, even now? Bran nodded. There's something there, calling me. I dreamed it. It's not over. And he was right, because something ancient and cold was waking in the far north. Something older than Lannisters or Frys. A force that would make the war in the south look like children's games. But before that storm could rise, vengeance still had its path to walk. In the south, news of the Red Wedding spread like wildfire. King's Landing erupted in celebration. Joffrey danced in the throne room. "The wolf pup is dead!" he shouted. "Bring me his head! I want to serve it at my wedding." Tyrion sat in silence. Sansa, sitting beside him, paled and began to cry, but not in front of Joffrey. She held it in, until later that night, when she stood alone in her chamber and whispered, "One day, I'll make them pay." Cersei smiled for the first time in weeks. Tywin, meanwhile, sat cold and pleased at the small council table. "The North is broken," he said. "They will kneel, or starve," but even he didn't know that Arya had lived, that Bran still walked, and that the North never forgets. A year had passed since the Red Wedding, a year since the banners of the wolf had fallen and the lion roared louder than ever. The North was shattered. Scattered lords either bent the knee or were burned in their keeps. Winterfell was held by the Boltons, with Rose Bolton crowned Warden of the North, and in the shadows, his bastard son Ramsay ruled through fear, skinning men, flaying families, sending mutilated corpses back to villages as warnings. But even in fear, the North remembered. They remembered Robb Stark, they remembered Catelyn, and they whispered the name of the girl who was said to have survived. A girl with no face. In the riverlands, soldiers began disappearing one by one. Not in battle, in the night. Throats slit, faces peeled, hearts stabbed in silence. One morning, a Frey patrol was found tied to a tree, skinless. Eyes carved out, mouths sewn shut. Above them, written in blood on bark, "The North remembers." Walder Frey doubled his guard. He ordered every inn searched, every camp checked, every road blocked. Still, his sons kept dying. Then one night, a serving girl brought him wine. She had soft eyes. "Familiar eyes. You're not one of mine." Sneered. "No," she said, "I'm one of yours." She slit his throat. Before he could scream, his sons followed minutes. Later, Arya Stark left the twins in silence. A list in her head, and no mercy left in her heart. Beyond the wall, the snows were endless, and the winds howled like ancient ghosts. But Bran Stark had crossed into the land of myth, guided by Mira, carried by Hodor, haunted by visions. He had found the three-eyed raven, an ancient man rooted beneath a great weirwood tree in a cave deep in the frozen north. "You are the last hope," the old voice whispered. "You must see what came before, and what comes after." Bran's eyes turned white as the weirwood. He saw Ned Stark's sword swing at the sept of Baelor. He saw Jaime. He die in the mud at the Whispering Wood. He saw Walder Frey laughing at a table drenched in Stark blood. He saw 1,000 faces, and then he saw the future. White Walkers marching, the wall crumbling, a throne of ash. When he woke, he was not just Bran, he was memory itself. "I know what I must do," he said. Meanwhile, in the south, Cracks began to show in the Lannister walls. Sansa Stark escaped King's Landing with the help of Littlefinger. Her face now cold, her voice steady, no longer a frightened girl. A player in the game. She knew how the world worked now, and she meant to use it. Tyrion, tired of playing puppet to Joffrey, whispered poison into cups until the boy king choked on his own arrogance. Joffrey died on his wedding day, purple-faced and clawing at his throat. Cersei screamed in rage, but Tywin only nodded once. One less threat. He didn't know he would be next, killed by his own son. Crossbow in hand, the lion's den was rotting from the inside. Then came Stannis Baratheon, with the Red Woman beside him. He rode north to take Winterfell from the Boltons. Fire lit the snow as thousands died. But Ramsay's cruelty had made even loyal Northerners defect. He won Winterfell, but he did not find a Stark until a rider came from the forest, a small girl in dark leathers, face like a shadow, eyes like ice. She tossed a bag on the table. Inside, Roose Bolton's face. "I'm Arya Stark," she said. "The North belongs to wolves. In Winterfell's great hall, the banners of House Stark rose again. Not by birthright, but by vengeance." Sansa returned in silk and steel, flanked by men from the Vale and old northern houses. Arya stood beside her. Bran was still far beyond the wall, watching through ravens and trees. The North had no king, but they had Stark blood. And blood was enough. The Freys were gone. The Boltons flayed. The Lannisters weakened. But winter was not done, because while men played their little wars, the true enemy gathered strength in the frozen dark. Bran saw them in his dreams, 1,000 blue eyes, dead men walking. Night King with no mercy. The living had won their revenge. Now they would fight for survival, and in Winterfell, as snow fell on stone, Arya stood at the battlements. "He's on the north," Sansa joined her. "They think we're broken," Sansa said. Arya shook her head. "Let them. We were born in the cold, and we'll end in fire." The North remembered, not just the names of the dead, but what it means to lose everything. And rise again. This time they weren't just wolves, they were vengeance. They were memory, they were the storm, and winter was here.